The biggest thing holding you back from getting the kind of progress with women that you want, by far, is not even the mistakes you're making with women themselves, but your inability to stop worrying about them, which is something I actually go extensively into in my course, The Interview. I always say the creepiest thing you can do is worry about being creepy. The neediest thing you can do is worry about being needy. The most corny shit you can do is worry about being corny. And the reason for that is very simple. When you're mistake oriented and mistake minded, when all you do is put your mind on trying not to make a mistake, all you're inevitably doing is training your subconscious mind to focus more on mistake making. And that inevitably is what leads to more mistakes, especially with women, but not just with women, with life in general. In fact, with me personally, I wish I could tell you that I learned this for the first time dealing with women, and it would definitely make this video better. But the truth is, I first learned this at a very young age, going back in my memory, all the way to when I was 12 years old, playing my very first video game. You see, I and my mom first came to America for the first time when I was 8 years old. I visited family. My family's always been in this country. So I was visiting for like 6 months. And my mom at some point decided we go into a Toys R Us and she'd get me a video game. Now, I remember that day there wasn't much of a selection for me. So the game I ended up picking was Mega Man Battle Network 3, the blue version. Mega Man because I had seen a few episodes of Mega Man EXE. I want to say a couple weeks before then, I had seen glimpses of it, and it would come on after Dragon Ball Z on Toonami. So that was kind of my 8-year-old logic. And then on top of that, blue version because blue is my favorite color. That was my reasoning. That's how I picked this game. I enjoyed this game. I still do to this very day whenever I get the chance. It's still one of my favorite video games of all time. And now that I'm looking back at it, especially if you're a fan of the game, you realize that game in a way told the future. The game in itself is set in the future, like a dystopian future where everyone has these pets, which would be akin to what we have our phones for today. And each pet had what we call a navigator, or a Navi for short, which was like an autonomous program within the pet that had a personality and can help you out with stuff. It can go into the internet and run errands for you, which is essentially what we have today as our AI, right? Very cool, very interesting. I definitely recommend you go and play the entirety of the Mega Man Battle Network series. Highly enjoy it. Amazing content in there. Go for it. Now, here's the thing though. For the first 4 years of me playing that game, I was never able to make it past the first day. My entire experience up to that point with all things adventure video games was that the game would auto save for you after each major boss fight, right? So my assumption was if I just made sure that I got past the first day and beat the first boss, which is Flashman in that particular game, then I would be able to make it into the next day. So I would go try my best to get past all the tutorials, the initial henchmen, and then get to the major boss, fight him, and hopefully win. But it never happened for the first 4 years, and not the entire stretch of the 4 years. You know, my parents were very strict, and I lived in an academia-focused household, so I only had that game to play for summer breaks and Christmas holidays. So it was more like a few months, but 2 or 3 months throughout the year for each year, it wasn't enough time apparently for me to finally make it past the first boss. I would lose somewhere in the middle of that entire thing, start the game all the way from the beginning. It was very frustrating. At some point, my best friend that I lived not too far away from, Chuck, we're going to call him, he decides he wants to borrow the game. I'm like, cool, let's trade. I'll give you my Mega Man Battle Network 3 Blue version, and you'll give me your Pokemon Ruby, I believe is what he had. Was like, cool, we'll go away for a week with each other's respective games and we'll play. Somewhere in the middle of that week, I go to visit him at his house. I can't remember for what, but I visit him at his house and I ask him like, hey, what's the progress with the game? Expecting him to have the same complaints that I had all 4 years prior. Mind you, I am fucking 12 years old at this point. In fact, I'm already in high school, right? I'm already well into high school, 2 years in fact, because I got in pretty young. I was 10 years old when I got in. But I was like, what's going on? Where's your progress with this entire game? And he goes, oh yeah, it's a really fun game. I'm having a lot of fun. Here's my progress. He turns on the game, and here I am expecting the game to start from the very beginning, the intro, and then the tutorial and everything. But no, their Mega Man is standing in a random spot in ACDC in the internet. Something that would usually be shown in the middle part of the game. And I'm like, wait a minute. How did you get to this point? Wait, why isn't the title screen showing? Why isn't the tutorial showing? What's going on here? And he goes, what are you talking about? This is my last save checkpoint. This is where my progress was saved. And I'm like, wait a minute, you can save in this game? And he's like, yeah, you can. Just like in the Pokemon game, this game too has a save feature. Can you believe that? I had gone 4 years playing this game and not realized, saying it out loud now makes me sound so dumb, but I was a dumb kid. I had gone 4 years playing this game and not realizing that you had the ability, if you wanted to, at any point, to save your fucking progress. Anyway, I was both confused, shocked, disappointed in myself, and excited. So I decided, you know what? This changes everything. This changes the entire game for me completely. Didn't realize you could save your progress. This makes it also very easy for me to finally get past the first boss. I hate to do this to you, my friend. I'm sorry, Chuck, but I'm gonna have to take my game back. Here's yours. I'm gonna go home and play this on my Game Boy Advance. Hope you understand. He goes, sure, no problem. Very understanding, dude. Very grateful for that. I took my game home. I remember I had 20 naira with me. I was gonna use it to buy some cookies. I said, fuck that. We're getting AA batteries today for my Game Boy Advance. So that's exactly what I did. And I ended up going home playing this game, using the save feature and having my mind blown like, whoa, I can save my fucking progress. Eventually, I played all the way up to the major boss that I'm trying to face. Flashman, he was called. And I saved my progress just before I went into the boss battle. And with this game, it was like, you save your progress before that point. You walk in, the boss has his own fucking monologue about why he's doing the evil shit he's doing. And then you fight him. And again, mind you, prior to that point, all I had ever done was get to that point, lose, and have to start the entire game from the very beginning. But this time, I had the ability to save my progress. So I saved. And guess what happened? The weirdest thing happened. I beat Flashman. I beat Flashman on the very first try. After years and years and years of barely getting to that point and losing to him, I finally beat him. To be fair, I had beaten him one time before, about 2 years prior, but my Game Boy Advance batteries died and I wasn't able to get to what I assumed would be the auto save function, right? After that you beat the boss, the intro that happens afterwards, blah, blah, the cutscene. But man, I beat him, and I beat him without even realizing. In fact, by the time I got to the point where all I needed was one more strike to put him away, I was genuinely shocked. Like, wait a minute. That's interesting. I didn't run out of chips. I didn't run out of weapons. And I didn't even notice that I had beaten him so decisively. How did this happen? How did this come to be? I just beat him straight away. Didn't even notice. That was the day I learned that, oh man, it's not even the fact that I had this save function with me that enabled me to beat him. Because again, being able to save your game's progress doesn't help you beat him or any boss better. It just makes it more convenient for you to be able to fight the boss without worrying about starting the game all over again. And that was the point. Is that the save function, knowing now that I had the ability to save my progress in the game, had completely removed from me my anxiety around losing to that final boss, that major boss, not the final boss, but the major boss in the game. And because I didn't have the anxiety or worry of losing to the boss anymore, and the consequences of losing to him weren't tremendous anymore, I had accidentally won. And that's the point. Sometimes in life, most times in life, you win, not by having superior strategy, not by doing everything correctly, not by making sure you don't make any mistakes, but just having the calm sense and presence of mind to not worry about making mistakes. That in itself alone is more than enough to give you the keys and the license to win every single time. That's exactly what I came to find years later dealing with women. Why do you think that every time you talk to a woman that you don't necessarily find the most attractive, your game is on 10? Right? You might fool or delude yourself into thinking that the reason for that is because, well, it's a lower quality woman, therefore the game is going to work better on them. No, in reality, it's not the game that's working better or not as good. It's just the fact that you no longer carry around with you this burden of it has to work. And because you're not trying to force it to work, it works tremendously well. Because you're not worried about making mistakes in front of this bitch because you frankly don't care. She's not the hottest girl. She's not the most attractive. She doesn't turn you on like that. So you're not worried about making mistakes with this girl because in your mind, those mistakes are inconsequential. What's going to happen? The girl that's not the hottest is going to stop talking to you. Oh no. You don't care. As opposed to talking to a girl that you genuinely find attractive. All of a sudden, every mistake feels like hell. Every mistake genuinely feels like, oh man, I might never see her again. I might never talk to her again. I might fumble her. You ever heard that? Fumble. That's when your game begins to suck. When you care and worry about making mistakes. Now, it's easier said than done to just say, don't worry about making mistakes. I'll do you one solid in this video. Not only am I going to teach you what I've been saying for the last few minutes, which is don't worry about making mistakes, I'm going to teach you how to recover from making mistakes, right? Because understanding how to recover from making any mistake with women in itself will give you so much confidence moving and maneuvering social dynamics so that way, whenever you see yourself either in the middle of making a mistake, or you've actually gone out of your way to make a mistake, you still don't panic. You still don't worry. You still have that calm confidence about you to know it doesn't matter. I've made the mistake. So what? I know how to recover, right? I've always said the difference between the guy who's advanced in the game and the guy who's a beginner is really just their ability to recover from mistakes. That's why the advanced person moves the way they do. That's why they move the way they do, because they don't care about what might happen. The beginner is still moving through dating and social dynamics like they're crawling through a minefield. It feels like they move dust the wrong way and everything explodes in their face. But the advanced, they kick the mines. They don't care. We don't care. We don't give a fuck because we know even if it explodes in our face, we know how to contain the blast. All right. So let me give you a very interesting, very quick principle for how to problem solve in the game. Understand the first thing. The first thing you need to understand. There are only two kinds of mistakes you'll ever make with a woman. Only two. Not 20 billion, not 30, not 140 million thousand combinations of mistakes. Just two kinds of mistakes. There are different ways these two different kinds of mistakes might manifest itself, different contexts, sure. But for the most part, there's only ever two mistakes you'll ever be able to make with women. There's only two reasons a woman and you will no longer get as along as you should, right? The first reason is you have demonstrated too much value. You have demonstrated too much value. That means you have said and done things around her that have pushed her away from you, that have made her feel like, man, this guy might be too cool for me. I might not be good enough for him. I might not be enough to keep him entertained. And yes, that is a real thing. It's not the most common kind of mistake, but it is real. It's one of the major reasons. The second reason is the inverse, which is that you have demonstrated too much comfort. You have made her feel too familiar with you. You have done and said things that have brought her too close and familiar with you that she feels like she can now do better than you. So understand, there's only two kinds of mistakes you can make, and they all revolve around the way the woman sees you. Either she sees you as can't do anything with this guy because I feel like he can do better than me, and that makes me feel unsafe and uncomfortable in the relationship with him, or this guy's a lame. I can do way better than him. I'd rather replace him with someone better than him, right? So a big part of game is really just finding that interesting balance between comfort and value. Not too much comfort and not too much value. You can't be too desirable, but you also can't be too attainable. That creates disrespect, and you know how they say familiarity breeds contempt, right? So if you know now that those are the two types of mistakes that you can make, that's very important, and congratulations. But that's only the first thing you need to understand. The second thing you need to understand is now that you know the two kinds of mistakes you have to make, or you can make, you now have to be able to identify which one you've made in the process of talking to a girl. So every time you find yourself in a snag with a girl, things aren't going the way they should, maybe she's pulling back or whatever, all you have to do now is identify what kind of mistake you've made so that you can correct, so you can actually solve. And the way you identify what mistake you've made is to observe the very last bit of action you took. You see, you got to treat game like chess. If you find yourself being trapped by your enemies, your king is getting in the point where he's getting stuck, and you're maybe 2 or 3 moves away from checkmate, the problem didn't start out with that particular turn where you discovered your king was in trouble. It probably started a good 7, 8 moves ago. Same thing with game. Right? You don't identify the problem itself in the moment you find out there's a problem. You identify the problem in the past, because whatever you did then is what is affecting you right now, right? Game is delayed results, delayed consequences. That's a part of why it's so hard to learn, right? The consequences usually don't show up right when the actual particular mistake was made. So go back in the past and figure out, okay, from the point where I can see her actions start to go in the direction I don't want it to, what did I do before that point? And you want to identify if what you did was demonstrating too much desirability, too much value, pushing her away with your words and actions, or demonstrating too much comfort, too much attainability, bringing her too close with comfort and familiarity, right? To the point where you breed respect, disrespect, right? Once you identify that, once you understand which one it is, and again, it's really going to be that simple to know which one it is, because all you got to do is look at your own personal words and actions. Do your words and actions push her away or bring her in closer? Do they make her feel more comfortable in the relationship, or do they make her feel less comfortable in the relationship? Are you telling her that she's the love of your life and you will never try to replace her and you will never love anyone else but her? That's probably too much comfort. If you're telling her, man, I don't think I ever want to be with you, I don't think things between us are going too well, or you even ignore her for a whole 2 weeks, right, and say nothing to her, you're probably putting in too much value into the situation. You're probably not building enough comfort with her, and she doesn't feel as safe, right? Okay. Now that we know the two kinds of mistakes that you can make and how to identify them, now it's time to correct them. And the principle is very simple. It's the fundamental law of the game, one of them anyway. And that is the principle of overcompensation. It's a very simple principle. It's a very simple law. And that is the fact that every time you find yourself in a particular kind of deficit when it comes to the game, anytime you find yourself in a major disadvantage, the way to correct, to get back in a position of advantage, is massive effort in the opposite direction. That is really what it comes down to. The example I always give is, for instance, if you're a short guy and you're dealing with women and dating and you're like, oh man, being short is terrible, this and that, blah, blah, blah. Okay, cool. We get it. Being short sucks in the dating game. Here's the thing though. If you want to correct for that, you're going to have to put in far more effort into making a woman feel genuinely safe around you than the guy who's naturally 6'4". Oh, but the guy who's 6'4" doesn't need to do all these things. No, he doesn't. He's not naturally 6'4". That's the point. He, by the nature of his genetic build, he has the ability to make women feel safe and even threatened automatically without even trying. Same thing with if, for instance, you're a muscly black guy, right? The point is, you can't be hung up in your brain about how much more effort you have to put in than someone else who has a natural advantage over you. If you are 5'2", you better put in far more effort than the guy who's 6'4" into make a woman feel genuinely safe around you. The real life example I'll give of that is Demetrius Johnson. Demetrius Johnson is 5'4", 5'5", I believe, and he is, in my opinion, the GOAT of mixed martial arts. He's the GOAT of MMA. He is your favorite fighter's favorite fighter. If you're into MMA and fighting at all, at some point you're watching Demetrius Johnson film, because he's the best to ever do it. He's the highest IQ fighter, crisp technique, amazing fighter, and again, even though he's small in stature, he has the ability and the capacity for danger and violence, which is why his wife, who, by the way, is taller than him, still feels very safe around him regardless, and has felt that way even long before he became a millionaire, world-renowned mixed martial artist and professional fighter. Okay? That's the point. Overcompensation. Whenever you find yourself in a position of disadvantage, make massive efforts in the opposite direction. So what does that look like for correcting your mistakes with women? Very simple. If you find out from your past actions that what you did was create too much comfort with a woman, make her feel a little too familiar with you, all you have to do is very simple. Begin to do things in the opposite direction. Begin to create massive amounts of unattainability in the way you talk to her and the way you act around her. So if it's the opposite direction, if it's you were building too much value or pushing her away too much and she doesn't feel enough comfort with you, all you have to do is begin to overcompensate with massive action and words that make her feel very comfortable around you. I'll give you an example. Let's say you ignore her for 2 weeks, right? Given the little example I gave before, you ignore her for 2 weeks. That creates a lot of unattainability in her mind. Now she's unsure of where she stands with you. She's uncertain about the relationship and the future of it. That's cool. How do you correct from that? Simple. Call her out of nowhere, plan an elaborate date with her where it's just you and her one-on-one and she gets all your undivided attention. You're going from one extreme to the other, right? Let's take the opposite, for example. Let's say you telegraph interest too soon with a girl, make her feel a little too comfortable, get a little too vulnerable with her too soon, get a little too honest with her too soon. And as a result, she now feels a little too familiar with you and she's not giving you the kind of respect or attraction she should anymore. All you got to do is change up the way you're talking to her. Go from, I see a future with you. I like you a lot. We should get together again, to saying things like, you know what? I don't really know you like that quite yet. I'm not really sure about you. Maybe I jumped the gun on deciding that you're someone I want to see in my future a little too soon. Maybe we should pump the brakes a little bit and figure things out a little bit, because as far as I know right now, I don't really know you from a hole in the wall, right? That's how you overcorrect from massive positions of disadvantage. Now, this is the last thing you need to understand about making corrections to your mistakes. The very last thing, and probably the most important thing by far. Pay very close attention to this part. I kind of feel sad for anyone that's already clicked off from the video from this point, because they're about to go and make some massive unnecessary mistakes and not be able to recover from them. But you won't, because you're smart and you stay to this point. Here's the most important part of this entire process from correcting mistakes. Make sure that while you're applying the law of overcorrection, overcompensation, and going from one extreme to the other, that you have something I call a conjunctive tool or prop, something that makes the transformation believable by joining those two extremes together, right? I call it a conjunctive tool because think about conjunctions in sentences. Imagine saying a long run-on sentence without using words like and or but. Now you have two phrases that don't make any sense when you put them together because they're two opposites, right? When it comes to dealing with women, and going from one kind of action to the other, there has to be a reason for that. There has to be something of a connective tissue that brings those two extremes together, so you don't look like a weird bipolar guy that's, too unpredictable, right? There has to be something believable about the reason you're going from one extreme to the other. So for instance, going back to that example of you ignore her for 2 weeks. Now you want to go from ignoring her for 2 weeks to planning out an elaborate date where she can get all your undivided attention one-on-one. You can't just do that in one fell swoop. You can't just leap from one to the other like Superman. You got to show her some Clark Kent. So what you do is you say, you know what? It's been unfair of me to ignore you for 2 weeks. To be honest, I didn't mean to ignore you. I was just kind of off in my own world doing my own thing, and also having a lot of thoughts about us and thinking about what we are to each other, if there's a future here, and what can be the two of us going forward. And I decided that I'm at the very least curious to see where things go with us. So I'm going to put some effort into this. Then suggest the elaborate date. See, now it makes sense. You're not just being one way hot and then one way cold for no reason. There is a warm in between. A very small warm, but it's a warm that at least joins the hot to the cold. It's not just going hot to cold. It's hot, warm, cold, cold, warm, hot. That is what makes you look like a grounded individual, and like you actually can make decisions and stick to them without being able to change your mind willy-nilly, which makes you someone that women can trust anyway for that kind of person, right? So keep that in mind. The example for the other way around, obviously, if you need another one, would be, let's say you've told her before that, you don't really I'm mixing this up. You've told her that you see a future with her, that you like her a lot. You've telegraphed too much interest too soon. Before you tell her to pump the brakes and tell her, I don't really know you like that, make sure you give a reason. So say something like, after something you just did, or after that thing you just said, it made me realize that maybe I'm jumping the gun on us. All right. That way, when you go, yeah, let's pump the brakes. I don't really know you like that. Let me get to know you a little better. Now it makes sense. Now she can point to a reason for why you're changing your mind on her. A real reason, a solid, believable reason. Not just that, oh, he feels rejected and now he wants to reject me back. Right? You see how that works? So keep this in mind. Let's go over this entire video again. Let's summarize the whole thing. First, your game will greatly improve if you stop worrying about making mistakes with women. Second, the best way to maneuver with women and not worry about making mistakes is learning how to recover from them. And how do you recover from them? Well, one, you have to make sure that you can identify when you've made a mistake. understanding the difference between demonstrating too much value or too much comfort, right? Those are the two kinds of mistakes you can make. And then on top of that, you have to make sure that when you've identified the kind of mistake you make, you overcorrect in the opposite direction. And then also make sure, and finally, that when you are overcorrecting, you're making sure that it's believable. You're putting in a reason for your transformation, a reason for your change of mind. That way, the change of mind makes sense to both you and her. That's pretty much it. That's right there is a video for you that takes you all the way from beginner to scratching the surface of advanced. Right now, I could just say all this and help you go through with this and give you all the explanation for how this works. But the best thing for you would be practice. Obviously, you need to practice your game, practice understanding how to maneuver women without having that fear of making mistakes, which is why I suggest going through my course, The Interview. The Interview is pretty much the entirety of the system I've created for giving you the power, the tools you need to go through talking to women, both in person, on a date, and even on the phone, in a way that you are not even a little bit worried about making any mistakes because everything is so plainly laid out for you and you're doing the correct things at the correct time and moving up the compliance ladder without any fear, without any kind of reservation about what might go wrong or how things might go wrong in this way or what to do if things do go wrong. Everything is laid out there for you inside the course. Go into The Interview. The link is in the bio, and I'll try to remember to put it in the first comment of this video as well. The Interview. Okay? All right. That's all you need for this video. Go out there and kill it. There's really nothing else to do. Just make sure you're practicing your game. All right? It's been Jason's favorite scientist. With all this information, what you must. You know what? I completely forgot to put this in the video. Remember that game, Mega Man Battle Network 3 Blue version? I still have it till this day. It's a little crumbed up now and the battery's dead and it's been dead for years, but it's fine. I have emulators on my laptop. Mega Man, jack in, execute.